Tonight in Charlotte, it was more than just another road game. It was a battle played on the Hornets floor, and a test of who can impose their will. Because when the Ball brothers share the court, the spotlight always follows. LaMelo Ball brought the energy for Charlotte, confidence, pace, creativity. But Cleveland answered with force. Donovan Mitchell setting the tone, Evan Mobley protecting the paint, Jarrett Allen owning the interior. On a night where family ties shared the floor, the Cavaliers stayed locked in on the mission. Road environment, brother versus brother. But this one comes down to team basketball, Cavaliers basketball. Welcome to another edition of the Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mac. And tonight our Cleveland Cavaliers took on the Charlotte Hornets. Well, if I'm being honest, right, this is NBA rivalry week. The league would see the likes of the Brooklyn Nets and the New York Knicks do battle. Milwaukee would square up with OKC. Hell, Houston and San Antonio would take on one another. But the Cavs, well, the Cavs would encounter none other than the Charlotte Hornets. Honestly, this is not much of a rivalry when you really look at it. It's essentially built on brother versus brother as the selling point. We already know who that is. Lonzo Ball versus LaMelo. Ball versus Ball. But believe it or not, those two have only played one another 5 times over the course of the years, which is not a lot. And guess what? That would not even happen tonight as they build it because Lonzo Ball didn't even play, right? Didn't even play. No real reason to dig into why these two haven't matched up a lot over the years. That said, it is the elder Ball that owns the winning record, and that would not change tonight, my friends. The Cavaliers would emerge victorious, as we know, up in Lonzo's record versus LaMelo to 4-2. Honestly, I don't even know if you can really throw that on his record simply because he did not enter the game. So I don't know if it'll actually go on his record, but if he did, the record would now stand at 4-2. And that is about as far as the rivalry stretches, at least in my opinion. Well, if you're counting former Cavalier Colin Sexton, I guess that too. But to be fair, the NBA did come into this one describing this matchup as a classic Eastern Conference matchup. Cavaliers, Hornets games showcase emerging guard talent in a growing mini rivalry. The action centers on Cleveland's backcourt against a Charlotte team led by LaMelo Ball, built on pace, ball movement, and perimeter scoring that leads to fast, competitive, high-scoring action. And I have to admit, some of that was right, but other parts were not. Look, Charlotte may not be world beaters. That much is clear, but they are playing much better basketball as of late. They enter today sitting at 12th in the Eastern Conference and winners of 5 of their last 10 games. 5-5 record. That's not terrible. Now, during that stretch, LaMelo Ball had been playing better, and that's the key word because he struggled tonight from an offensive standpoint outside of playmaking and rebounding, all right? He came into tonight over the last 10 games, averaging 19 points, 6 rebounds, and 4.5 assists while completing 42.4% of his shots, including 47.8% from three-point range. Now, LaMelo was not the only person hooping over there during that stretch. Rookie sensation Knueppel has also been balling out this year. He will continue that strong level of play tonight. But entering this game over his last 10 appearances, he was averaging 18.3 points, 5.7 rebounds. He's a very good rebounder, 3.4 assists, pretty underrated playmaker. And the best part about it is probably the efficiency with which he has operated with. He came into tonight shooting 50.8% from the field over his last 10 games, which includes 44.8% from three-point distance. Brandon Miller has upped his game too, and you saw that in the second half of today's game. He came into today averaging 20.3 points and 3.6 assists to go along with 5 boards on shooting splits of 45.4% from the field, including 44.3% from range. He was huge in their comeback attempt. And obviously, I do want to point to Colin Sexton, who during that same stretch put up 13.8 on 51.9% from the field. Not the best three-point shot is Colin, but he had been contributing a big spark off of that Hornets bench. So I got to give it to him. But tonight, at least in the first half, they got their asses handed to them. Cleveland took it to them, and while there were multiple contributors in doing so, it was truly Evan Mobley in that first half that stood out among the bunch, right? Evan Mobley was aggressive as hell in those first 2 quarters. No other way around it, right? He was a madman on the glass, especially in the first half, in which he yanked down, I think, 11 total rebounds. He took dudes off the dribble, like he did against LaMelo Ball for a jam about 9 minutes through the second quarter. He just got to the rim whenever he wanted off of a lot of dribble drives, which is exactly what you want to see for Evan Mobley, putting the ball on the floor and attacking and antagonizing. I forget who I was conversing with on social the other day, but this is along the lines of what I hope to see out of Evan Mobley more consistently. And I understand that the level of skill there in terms of ball handling is not always going to allow him to function the way that he did tonight, purely in terms of handling the rock, putting the ball on the floor, attacking closeouts, or really just taking his opponents off of the dribble. That's not always going to be the case for Mobley. But when he does do that, it is very encouraging, at least in my estimation, because they really just didn't have an answer for him in that regard. Mobley would finish with a double-double in the first half alone, as he was tremendously dominant on both ends of the floor, especially on the defensive side. He would put up 13 points, 11 boards, 1 steal, and was a pretty efficient 6 of 11 from the field up to that point in the game. But Mobley was not the only Cavalier to contribute heavily early on. He just stood out the most. Donovan Mitchell, who was fresh off of getting hounded by the Thunder, was pretty solid in the first half. And let me make that delineation clear. Let me make that statement very clear. He was really efficient in the first half. Second half, not so much. Whole Cavaliers team struggled, is what it felt like in the second half. But at least in the first half, Donovan was pretty good compared to what we saw from him against OKC. But beyond scoring, going beyond that, there were some really valuable contributions from the role players tonight, too, through the first 2 quarters. Dean Wade was locked in defensively and was constantly at the right place at the right time for rebounds, whether that be of the long or short variety. Naquan Tomlin was extremely active on the glass, especially the offensive glass, finishing a few tip dunks in those first 2 quarters, as we have become accustomed to seeing him doing. I love throwing this stat out there, so I'm just going to do it once more. Naquan Tomlin entered tonight within the 95th percentile among forwards in offensive rebounding percentage at 8%. The only players who are higher in that regard are Jabari Walker and Jeremiah Robinson Earl. And then Craig Porter Jr. I do have to kind of give him a shout out. He was impactful as a shot blocker through those first 2, racking up 2 more blocks. And to those of you who are unaware, CPJ actually entered tonight with the most blocks among reserve guards this season, with 23 while coming off the bench. So he upped that to 25. He's in the 98th percentile among combos in block percentage at 1.9%. The only player entering tonight that was ahead of him in that specific category was Derek White, a very good two-way player and shot blocker at the guard position in his own right, and a much taller player, right? Craig Porter Jr. is 6'2". That's being generous with his height listing, but he can get up. He is so athletic, and he makes some really, really highlight-worthy rejections. Just exceptional, simply exceptional in that specific category. And in the first half, Kenny Atkinson felt so comfortable with the way that this game was going that we even saw my guy, Larry Nance Jr., right, who's got the jersey right back there signed, right? He entered the game and actually contributed some solid minutes tonight, at least through the first couple of quarters. And, like I mentioned, who we did not see, Lonzo Ball. This was built on ball versus ball, but there was no Lonzo Ball on the court. And you might as well have said there was no LaMelo too, because he sucked. He was atrocious offensively tonight. I digress. Up to that point, the Cavaliers led by as much as 27 points, and they entered the half up 56-32. That's a 24-point lead. Keep that in mind. Couple of key stats to point out. The Cavaliers were outscoring the Hornets in the paint 30-20 through the first 2. They were absolutely phenomenal on the offensive glass up to that point, which led to a ton of second chance opportunities, which in turn were turned into 18 second chance points to Charlotte's 3. Charlotte did, however, get out on the fast break and take advantage of many, many Cavalier turnovers. They outscored Cleveland 16-2 in the fast break department. Entering the second half, a couple of things were clear, right? LaMelo Ball was struggling. As I mentioned, he was 1 of 11 from the field up to that point and had just 2 points and 3 assists off the bench. Because keep in mind, he is coming off the bench right now. Brandon Miller, that's a name that you all should be familiar with now, was 0 of 5 up to that point. The only player who was in double figures up to that point for the Charlotte Hornets was rookie sensation Knueppel, who had 10 points on 4-10 from the field. And speaking of I feel like I do need to take a bit of a minute to objectively applaud him for the fact that he is actually on pace to break the all-time rookie record for most triples in a season. He came into this game with 143 total trays, which is actually the 25th most all time for any rookie in a singular season. And he still got over half a fucking season to play. All right. Now, Keegan Murray is the all-time leader who in that department after drilling 206 back during the 2022-23 season. And what's even crazier than that is the fact that 2 of the top 5 people in this area were actually playing in tonight's game, that being Donovan Mitchell, who drilled 187 during his rookie season, and Brandon Miller, his teammate, who knocked down 184 back during the 2023-24 season. But the craziest part of all is the efficiency with which Knueppel has operated at in this specific area. He entered tonight completing 43.5% of his triples, and that is a huge, huge thing for a Charlotte Hornets team that needs just about every contribution that he can bring to the table. And for him to be playing that efficiently as a rookie, for him to be shooting that efficiently as a rookie, it's going to be really, really hard to deny this guy access to the Rookie of the Year award. Because to me, right now, it's between him and Cooper Flag. And honestly, if you take a look at it, pure impact out there, I think Knueppel has the edge, but I don't think he'll end up winning it. He was impactful for them in the third, and they needed him to be impactful as LaMelo just continued to struggle from an offensive standpoint. And to think that some people actually want to trade Darius Garland for that guy, and I'm not trying to pick on him too much, but it always cracks me up because it's not something that would help the Cavaliers. That said, though his shot wasn't falling, the one credit that I do have to give him was his playmaking. It was on point up to a T as he hit Brandon Miller in stride for back-to-back alley-oops in transition midway through the third quarter. And Miller, speaking of him, he was actually the most impactful player on that team for them during the third quarter that saw him get out of his funk. He scored 17 of his 19 points up to that point in the third quarter alone. Somebody else who deserves credit is Musa Diabate, whose energy on the glass and on the defensive end was also pretty crucial as well. He and Jarrett Allen ended up in a small confrontation, which is something you don't really see with Jarrett Allen a lot, as they got tangled up under the rim, fighting for a rebound. By the way, in my opinion, that's a good thing, right? Jarrett Allen, seeing him get fired up, that rarely happens. So when that I can only count that probably on my hand, the number of times I've seen that. The one that sticks out to me the most is probably Ben Simmons. I know we all remember that one against Brooklyn not so long ago. He ended up racking up his first technical of the season during that sequence, if I'm not mistaken. The Cavaliers, they turn the ball over a lot. And that, along with the contributions from Miller and Knueppel and others, led to the Cavaliers surrendering that huge lead that they had, right? They turned it over a lot, and Charlotte took advantage of that. They managed to score 17 points off of turnovers through the first 3 quarters of this game. They outscored Cleveland 32-20 to help cut that lead to 12 entering the fourth quarter. Josh Green, right out of the gate, cut it to 9 after a triple, and then Colin Sexton drove into the interior off of a Cavalier turnover to cut it to 7. And it just felt like there were so many turnovers in the second half. There was a lot in the first half too, but the second half is what really felt like it was just stacking and stacking and stacking. Thankfully, at that point, at least at that point in the fourth quarter, Evan Mobley was there to stop the bleeding, rejecting shots at the rim and getting transition opportunities for his guys. I think he hit Larry Nance Jr. for a good look, which he cashed in on. But you really got to respect the fight of the Charlotte Hornets. I mean, they entered this game, like I said, as winners of 5 of their last 10 games. They've been playing better basketball as of late. They're not a pushover, and they're not going to lie down and just let teams that many people might consider superior to them just wipe them out. That's not going to happen. They will fight. Guys like Josh Green, who had 9+ rebounds. Guys like Ryan Kalkbrenner and Grant Williams, who just came back recently. Huge in their comeback bid. But at that point, all the Cavaliers had to do was settle down, at least in my opinion, right? They were playing some really sloppy and careless basketball. I mean, Donovan had 7 turnovers at that point in the game, some of which could have been easily avoided, which always seems to happen when he's charged with playing at the point. Something I continue to argue people down. Like, point Donovan is okay in stretches, but you don't want that over the duration of a season. He can facilitate. He is a combo guard, but the way in which he orchestrates the offense is entirely different feel than you get from a Darius Garland or a Craig Porter Jr. at times, right? You don't want Donovan running the point full time. And games like tonight continue to show why that is, because it can be up and down. It can look really beautiful at times as he's out there wheeling and dealing, driving into the paint, kicking it out to the perimeter. But he still struggles at times with entry passes. He's not really a good dump off guy, getting the ball to the bigs in the around the rim like we saw so many times from Karis LeVert over the years, or Darius Garland. And there are a couple other on the roster. Craig is really good at doing that, but Donovan, he's really inconsistent at that. And there are just a lot of careless turnovers as a result of that. This was not the greatest Donovan Mitchell performance in the second half. Up to that point, they led 86-73 with about 6 minutes left. That's a 13-point lead, ladies and gentlemen. Brandon Miller drilled a 3 to cut the lead to 6 with under. it just felt like it was nonstop from Brandon Miller tonight. He hit that triple and he cut the lead to 6 with under a minute to play after the Cavaliers went back and forth a number of times. And then the Cavaliers turned the ball over on a moving screen. So many turnovers. Just a pitiful second half showing, honestly. They got outscored tremendously in that second half, and so much of that was because of the turnovers. They almost blew a 24-point lead, which at that point, right, they led by as many as 27. If they had lost this game, I think it would have been the largest comeback of the season for any team. Khan drove to the cup and scored 2 more, cutting the lead to 4 with about 11.9 seconds left to go in this one. And at that point, my palms are getting sweaty. Cue the Eminem track. Turnovers nearly doomed them. That's really what this boils down to. And it very easily could have turned into another disappointing loss against what I consider an inferior opponent. I'll say this. A win is a win. I'm not here to complain a lot, but all I'm going to say is that this right here was a game that very easily could have been given away. And you don't want to see that from a team that needs to be better, right? They just have to be better. After they lost to OKC, honestly, I wasn't all that dejected, right? I expected the Cavaliers to have a struggle in that one, especially with no Darius Garland, no Sam Merrill. Those are 2 big losses against a team like that where you need connectors. The way they lost that one sucked ass, but I was not necessarily discouraged by the fact that they lost. Had they lost tonight, I would have been dejected because the team has still been trending upward, but they're still showcasing a lot of the same habits and issues that have gotten them to this point so far, right? We continue to talk about not getting the bigs involved. We continue to talk about the atrocious 3-point defense. We know that they're allowing the league's highest percentage of threes to be completed on that end of the floor. These are all issues that other teams tend to take advantage of whenever they play Cleveland or whenever Cleveland comes to town. And it did not change tonight, unfortunately. I know Charlotte didn't necessarily shoot the most efficiently tonight, as they shot, if I'm not mistaken, just 17% from 3-point range, but they were giving up good looks to Charlotte. And whether you want to call that, we're going to give them these attempts, we're going to gamble more often than not. No, that's not what I saw. I saw a lot of shots that should have been covered, not covered out there. I saw lackadaisical closeouts. I saw rotations that weren't necessarily the quickest. I saw guys over helping, which led to open triples. That was the case on a drive and kick from Sion James. It just same issues. That's what I'm trying to say. The same issues continue to plague this team. And yeah, you can get away with it against teams like Charlotte, who, again, 12th in the Eastern Conference. Cavaliers aren't much better in terms of the record this year. But at the end of the day, when you're playing a superior opponent, when you're playing an opponent that is on your level, you're not going to be able to get away with that more often than not, because it's not every game where you're going to get an opponent that shoots 1 of 15 from the floor or 0 of 10 from 3-point distance like LaMelo did today. You're not going to get somebody shooting 3 of 11 from 3-point distance like Brandon Miller, or 2 of 10 like Khan did. That's just not always going to be the case. And at the end of the day, I hope among so many things that starts to trend upward. But honestly, if I'm being honest with you guys, I don't have a lot of hopes in their 3-point defense getting better. They're just going to have to beat it with better offense, and that's going to be hit and miss. The Cavaliers, as a team tonight, shot just 8 of 40 from 3-point range themselves. That is 20%. They shot 39.1% from the field. Yes, from the field, not 3-point range. They were not efficient, and a lot of that boils down to the inefficiency in the second half of this game. Jalen Tyson, this one is going to hurt his percentages. He was 6 of 17 from the floor tonight, 1 of 9 from 3-point distance. That's 11.1%. That's going to hurt those percentages, but he did make some quality plays, and I enjoyed watching him put the ball on the floor, attack closeouts, and try and get his own shots. That is something that he continues to improve at. He's not quite at the point of me feeling comfortable with him being this secondary scorer on the ball, but he is improving. He does attack closeouts. He is not afraid to pull the trigger when he needs to, and I think that played out probably most noteworthy when he took that mid-range fadeaway bank shot in the second half of this game. That was nice to see. As I mentioned, Don, he was pretty shitty in the second half. He was 8 of 20 from the floor overall. That's 40%. He was 2 of 8 from deep. That's 25%. And he turned the ball over 8 total times today. That's not what you want to see, right? DeAndre Hunter, another rough showing from DeAndre, just 1 of 6 from the floor. Listen, I posted the stats for DeAndre's last 10 games earlier on today, and I was legitimately hoping that he would try and build upon those last 10. I know the performance against OKC wasn't necessarily great either, but his last 10 have actually been pretty encouraging from a counting stats perspective. The problem with DeAndre has been the efficiency. Over his last 10 games prior to today, he was actually averaging 12.2 points and 5.4 rebounds to go along with 2.6 assists. Those are respectable stats, but the efficiency is terrible. 42.9% from the floor, 30.2% from 3-point range. We already know this is the worst season by far that he has had from 3-point range. That's not going to change after tonight, but he was still a plus 5.2 overall during that 10-game stretch. DeAndre, the problem with DeAndre right now is that you look at what he is providing and you look at it, the price tag the Cavaliers are paying him, right? $23+ million for a player averaging very little in that regard. You just need more from DeAndre Hunter. And this is why people sit down and have these conversations about the future and about whether or not he'll be a Cleveland Cavalier past this season or next season, because he is going to be due a contract extension here sooner or later, right? But he has to be much better. He has been pitiful. DeAndre only played 13 minutes and 17 seconds of action tonight, and rightfully so. Naquan Tomlin, juxtaposed to Hunter, was way more impactful. And I know the minutes overlap between those two is going to be a little odd at times because the Cavaliers like to play Naquan Tomlin in one of two positions. You're either going to play him at the 3 or you're going to play him at the 4. If we're Naquan in particular, he has actually played the bulk of his minutes, if I'm not mistaken, at the small forward position this year. And so, actually, no, he's played the bulk of his minutes at the 4 this year. 70% of his minutes have come at the 4. That's 68th percentile for him. But when he's operating at the small 4, at the 3, the Cavaliers, in terms of point differential, are plus 12.2. That's in the 90th percentile. So he's clearly been more effective when he's at the 3. DeAndre Hunter, from a positional standpoint, is versatile, but when he is not spacing the floor like he is capable of, when he's not knocking down the mid-range shot, when he's capable of, when he is not a true positive defensively, I have no problem with Kenny Atkinson pulling his minutes because, frankly speaking, This has not been a good season from DeAndre, and he has to be better. He's going through this stretch where the play has looked better, but he still has these games where he is net negative or he's just not impacting the game whatsoever. And I don't know what it is. Some people would jokingly say, or maybe they truly believe that the departure of Ty Jerome has impacted him tremendously. Maybe they just think he's struggling. Maybe they think this is closer to the player that he has always been. Maybe people think this is why Atlanta moved on so easily. But all I can tell you for sure is that DeAndre Hunter has to be better. In terms of the minutes distribution for him, 56% of his minutes have come at the 3, and 38% of his minutes have come at the 4. He has actually been better when playing the 4 this year, as the Cavaliers are plus 3.4 in terms of point differential when he is at that position, juxtaposed to minus 1.3 at the small forward. It was completely different last year. He was better at small forward than he was at power forward last season for the Cavaliers. And to be honest with you, I don't know what the fuck's going on with DeAndre. All I know is that he has to be better. And I'll just leave it at that. Just it truly is painful to see play at times, and this is why I think Kenny went away from him. Got to be honest with you, I was pretty surprised that we saw Larry as big of a fan of Larry Nash Jr. as I am and will always be. I was surprised that Kenny actually put him out there as early as he did, and I actually thought he was pretty impactful in the 12 minutes that he played tonight. I know he didn't take a bunch of shots, just 3 total, but he did knock down 2 of them. And he did cash that triple, which is a pretty important one after that Evan Mobley rejection. Transition triple. You just don't see that a lot these days. And Larry would finish a plus 14, which is tied for a game high with Jalen Tyson. He would also play pretty productive defense out there. And I get it. It's the Hornets. It's not a world beater. But tonight, he looked about as spry as we have seen him look all season. And maybe that's because he's sitting here not playing as much. Obviously, with the emergence of Naquan Tomlin and DeAndre getting the bulk of those minutes and Dean Wade obviously being back. But I was impressed by what we saw from Larry tonight. It's hard to say whether or not we're going to get those consistently impactful minutes from him, but I think Kenny did a good thing. And to me, that speaks volumes about his trust in specific players. Again, they had the lead though. I mean, they had the lead. They felt comfortable enough to put him out there, and they put him out there again in the second half. So say what you will about Larry, but he was impactful tonight. Somebody else I was really impressed with just in general, Jarrett Allen. Jarrett Allen, to me, continues to play a really good game, right? He's not always involved. The Cavaliers sometimes struggle to get him the ball around the rim. I saw a couple of sequences tonight where they tried to make that happen, but I legitimately was impressed by what I saw from Jarrett Allen at points during this game. I think things could have been better for him, but I also loved the intensity out there. I think that him getting a little frenzied versus Musa was cool to see, because again, you just don't see that too often from Jarrett Allen, and he does make the most of his opportunities, and he does work on the glass. Finished with 9 rebounds today, 13 points, 2 rejections. Good, solid performance from Jarrett Allen overall. But that's about as much as I can take away from this game, right? There's not honestly too much else to discuss from this one. The Cavaliers have to be better. They have to take better care of the basketball as they turn the ball over 20 total times today, which Charlotte turned that into 21 points off of turnovers. And they have to figure this whole thing with the perimeter defense out. Again, I don't know if that'll happen. I lose hope in that happening with each and every game that passes because of the number of open looks that they are ceding to other teams. But at the very least, Charlotte did not make them pay for that too often. There were times where the Cavaliers needed a stop and they got it. And then there are other points where Charlotte was able to hit a clutch 3. Brandon Miller was probably at the forefront of that. Knueppel did as well, but 3-pointers were not often come by the Hornets tonight. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. And with that being said, probably a good place to hop into the chat. So let's see what you guys are saying tonight. Jazz says Cavs 3-point shooting and turnovers with DG and Merrill. Hornets are a fun team, in my opinion, if not a good one. Yeah, and he says without. Yeah. So I understand what you're saying. I think that at the end of the day, Charlotte's not a bad team, but they're not necessarily a good team either at this point. They're getting better. They have so many young talents over there that are trying to break out. They have a rookie sensation in Khan. Who knows what the hell's going to happen with LaMelo coming off the bench now? Musa is gold. Kalkbrenner, there's a couple of players on that roster that legitimately intrigue me, but they're not a bad team. I'll say it one last time. 5-5 over the last 10. They have been playing much better as of late, and Khan and Brandon Miller have been at the forefront of that. LaMelo hasn't been far behind, but they've been getting some contributions from guys. Kneecap here says, Don is going to make me hate him the way he's playing right now. Went completely away from the bigs again in second half. Just some same shit over and over. Kenny and Don both to blame. Yeah, I mean, I'll point this out again. Don is not a point guard. I continue to say this. Don struggles with entry passes to the bigs. He struggles at times with anything other than drive and kick. That is his bread and butter as a playmaker. He's drive and kick. He knows how to get guys shots out on the perimeter, and that's the extent of the high-level passing or facilitating for Don. Is he capable of dump-offs? Yes. Is he capable of alley-oops and lob passes? Yes. Is he capable of the entry pass? Yes. But it's not consistent enough for me to feel great about him running point full-time. And that plays out during various sequences of games. And that is why it's important to have an orchestrator, a true floor general beside him most of the time. That's why Darius Garland's importance to this team continues to be understated by the fans. Yes, I understand that he has injury issues. Yes, I understand that people want to trade him, but the importance of Darius Garland's orchestration is important in terms of the setup and flow of this offense, in terms of getting Jarrett Allen involved, in terms of keeping them involved. It is critical. And that's why Craig Porter Jr., that's why a lot of people have argued that in DG's absence, Craig should actually be the player starting at the 1, sliding Don back over to his natural position at the 2, and then you decide whatever the fuck you're going to do at the 3 if you're Kenny Atkinson, whether that be Dean Wade, DeAndre Hunter, Jalen Tyson, or Sam Merrill by chance if he comes back. I don't think Merrill will, but you get what I'm trying to say. Craig Porter Jr. should probably be the one starting at 1. But with Lonzo not playing great basketball, with Tyrese Proctor not being a trusted and true ball handler at the 1, I understand why they may want to keep CPJ's minutes on the bench because you need floor general out there in the second unit because you're just not getting that from anybody else with Darius Garland not healthy right now. Obviously, you don't have Max Strus. You don't have Sam Merrill, some of your connectors out there. So, yeah, I understand why he made that decision. But I would think that you can figure that out a specific way. I would think that you can stagger it a specific way to if you start Craig Porter Jr., maybe Craig is the first person that leaves the game. You either pull Lonzo, give him an opportunity, you give Tyrese an opportunity, or when you're moving Craig to the bench in those specific lineups, you're sliding Don back over to the 1, and then you're playing Tyrese, or you're making a move to have Tyson at the 2. And there's a couple of different things that they can do to stagger these minutes without Darius. But I say all that to say it's really a pick your own poison type of thing because there are pros and cons with each of those arguments. Craig Porter Jr. is not the greatest on-ball creator yet in his career. There are points really where I want to pull my hair out when he doesn't attempt a three-point shot because he's actually a damn lethal shooter. He just needs that more frequently in his game. He's actually pretty damn efficient on pull-up J's throughout the course of his career. I pointed this out on social as well, but he's highly efficient when attempting the pull-up triple, especially the step back, but you're not seeing that as consistently enough from him. He often defers, or he likes the mid-range shot, which he's also efficient at, or he gets to the rim, gets downhill as a slasher. And that's also another area of his game that he's impressive with. But in terms of that sheer on-ball creation, he's nowhere near the level of Darius Garland in that area. Jalen Tyson is still a work in progress on the ball. He's much better off the ball. There's just not a lot of options when you don't have Darius because they don't have another guard that they truly trust right now because Lonzo is so hit and miss. And we already know the three-point shot is just ass right now for him, which that almost makes him unplayable. Chaz Erica says Hunter definitely needs to do better. Yeah, we already talked about him. He needs to be better. If Flexpo says nothing really to talk about, just better had one. But where are y'all that wanted to trade Darius for 1 of 12 Melo, 1 of 15, actually, I think. Y'all just want that swap because Melo was tall, but he and Darius are mid defensively. At least in my opinion, LaMelo Ball is much less efficient. I understand that the size concerns will always be there and the defensive limitations will always be there for Darius. And LaMelo, when he tries defensively, can be better. There were points tonight where he was impactful defensively. But the efficiency leaves so much to be desired for LaMelo. Even in his good seasons, he's never truly been efficient. Darius Garland has mostly been efficient for the duration of his career. There are certain seasons that have not been as efficient as others, but the totality of his career has yielded much more efficiency than LaMelo Ball. They each have their pros, they each have their cons, but I'll take Darius Garland any day of the week over LaMelo Ball, especially when you factor in the injuries of the two. I mean, people love to consider Darius Garland injury prone, and that is a whole nother conversation. But LaMelo Ball is that exemplified most of the time. Let's see here. Floyd Phillips II says Mac wrote this monologue ahead of the game. His script is better than the game. Yeah, I did. Listen, I'll be honest with you guys. I wrote that up today, and I had no way of knowing that LaMelo Ball would not, or that Lonzo Ball would not play, and that LaMelo Ball would be ass. I was hoping that LaMelo would be better to have something to sell for this game because that's what the NBA was hoping for, brother versus brother. I don't think anybody would have expected Lonzo to be as shitty as he's been this year. I don't think anybody expected LaMelo to be as terrible in this game as he was. Again, LaMelo Ball was what, 1 of 15 today? 0 of 10 from 3-point range. He was terrible today. Let's see here. Salt Taco says the Hornets are slowly becoming a playoff team. Respect to their growth. I'm interested to see their future. I don't think they'll be a playoff team this year, but I definitely believe that they will end this season in the lottery territory. Not lottery, in the play-in territory. I don't know if they'll make it, but they're certainly better than their record indicates, and they have been playing better basketball as of late. And they got some really fun pieces over there, and they truly do. It's objectively speaking, this was it was nice to see Brandon Miller do some of the shit that he did out there, and Khan do some of what he did out there because they're fun players. If Lifespo says, I feel a little bad for Lonzo, but it is his fault. He just wants to play better. He put himself in the doghouse. It's kind of sad. And yeah, man, I hate to discuss Lonzo almost every pod. But honestly, at the end of the day, I want this to work. I wanted this to work so badly entering the season. I legitimately thought when the Cavaliers acquired Lonzo was a match made in heaven in regards to reclamation projects, because I did believe at that point in time it was time to move on from Isaac Okoro. And that's an entire different argument. But I understood that there were gambles involved. I understand the risk involved with bringing in a player who was coming off the massive amount of injuries that he did, was not necessarily efficient when he did play last year, but I also attributed that to being gone for so long, missing 2+ seasons of basketball due to various issues with his knees, right? And cartilage, right? But I did not expect Lonzo to have this big of a fall off. There's so many people out there that will say, oh, they're not using him right, or he's not playing in his preferred position, or they're using him as a 3, or, he's not playing point. He's playing off the ball too much. He's not getting the touches, et cetera, et cetera. But essentially, this all boils down to a couple of key things. 3-point shot making. Lonzo's been hellish in that area, and dribble penetration for Lonzo particularly. He does not drive. He does not attack closeouts. He does not put the ball on the floor. Therefore, he becomes predictable offensively. Defenses sag off of him. They know what he is going to do. He will get the ball, swing it around the perimeter. He will screen for others. He will free people up. He will hit players with the entry pass. He's good as a facilitator, as a playmaker. I don't question that, nor should you. But when you don't drive, that limits how effective your playmaking can be, because there is no threat of the driving kick. There is no threat of the dump-off pass. There is no threat of the alley-oop most of the time. There's so many things that puts a cap on what you do as a facilitator if you're not willing to put the ball on the floor. Defensively, we already know what he is. He's not quite as great as he used to be on or at the point of attack, but he still gambles and he still comes up with a good play on that end of the floor. He's still a respectable defender, is what I'm trying to say. Solid rebounder for position. Good rebounder, good playmaker, good defender. Not a good shooter at this point in his career. That's all it boils down to. So when that happens, guys like Craig Porter Jr., they will play. Tyrese Proctor, he will play. Lonzo, he may not play. He may get another opportunity, especially with the deadline approaching. But at the end of the day, he did put himself in this position. As much as I want this to work out, he's not giving me a lot of faith that it will. That's what I'm trying to say. Andrew Coachell says, yeah, BK lost by 54 to New York. Holy fuck. Jeez. I could barely believe it when I saw it. Jay Diaz says, need more from Mobley offensively. They went away from him. Listen, yeah, I know the three-point shot was not there for Mobley tonight, but honestly, he could have gotten more had the Cavaliers done more to get him the ball, because he did put the ball on the floor a lot and attack the defender. We saw him take LaMelo Ball off the dribble. Right. We saw him drive into the interior a number of times. They went away from him, in my opinion. Flip second says, the boy is as good as gone. Bye-bye. Bucknut says he's getting traded. He might, but it depends upon the return. They're not just going to trade him to trade him. I put a video out. I explained it all from a financialist perspective on what that actually could look like for Cleveland in terms of how much the $10 billion could turn into, because he is on a $10 million contract right now with a team option for $10 million next season. It is not simply just the $10 million that they could be shedding. But in saying that, there's not a lot of teams that are going to be willing just to accept that money. It's really just two, without including a player in return, which kind of negates shedding that salary or incentivizing them with draft capital. But the Cavaliers don't really have to give. It's Utah and Brooklyn. Those are really the only two cap space teams. And I did include some of those, or I did include both of them in potential trades for Alonzo in that video, but that's a long shot. That's a far cry. You can't expect teams with how pitiful he's looked this year to just take that $10 million unless they really want the expiring next year. So it may make sense for the Cavaliers just to hold on to him for flexibility's sake and make a decision in the offseason with a team option. We'll see, though. I don't know. There's just so many different things to consider in that regard. MNGS says, if the Cavaliers depend on DG this much for playmaking, then the roster construction is pretty flawed. Too many of the same player archetypes. And there's a real conversation to be had based around the roster construction. This team does have many flaws. Some of them that they failed to fix in the offseason, some of them that they thought that they would have, right? I don't think many people truly expected Lonzo to be as bad as he has been this year. I don't think many people expected Kenny Atkinson to play Thomas Bryant as infrequently as he has this year. A lot of people probably did expect Larry Nance Jr. not to look like the player that he did with Atlanta in limited action. But I did believe in Larry, and I still, to a point, do believe in Larry. But it remains to be seen if Larry can be consistent. He was pretty impactful tonight in the minutes, but it was Kobe Altman and company missed this offseason. Let's just put it that way. That's been buoyed by breakouts, right? In the drafts. They've drafted well and they've picked up guys off the undrafted market. Well, they've done that, but the acquisition market hasn't been the best so far. And this offseason is pretty dire in that regard, because they haven't got a lot of return on investment outside of the guys that were already on this roster, and Tyson and Tomlin and Merrill and Craig. I don't think a lot of people expected it to be that bad, but they definitely missed this past offseason. That's all I can say. I think Kobe and Mike definitely thought that they were doing something, and honestly, I'm not going to be up here and act like I thought they didn't at the time, because I legitimately thought the moves they made were impactful, or were going to be. I definitely was a fan of the Lonzo trade. You guys know that. I was a huge fan of the Thomas Bryant acquisition, and I still think that can work out. But you got to play him. And Larry, Larry's been injured, and he has not been great when he has played most of the season. Let's hope tonight is a step in the right direction for him. But I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is. Let's see who else. Ian7064 says trading DG for LaMelo is like trading for Morant. It's all because of flash. Take that away, there's no substance. 100% agree with that statement. Does not make the team better in any regard. Morant struggles to shoot, not a great leader. LaMelo misses as much time, if not more, than Darius and is way less efficient. And he has some maturity issues of his own. Keep DG if those are the two options. That's really what it is. That's really what it is. Cleveland sports fan one says, I thought that at points in this game when turnovers got bad, that Lonzo would have been so helpful. There are points in games where I catch myself hoping that they'll just throw Lonzo in there for that alone. But the problem is that Lonzo has this bad habit of taking bad shots at times. And I think the justification for pulling him is just it is correct, right? I don't know really what else to say in that regard. Jackson Rosie says, Sammy is my favorite player, honestly. Yeah, I mean, Sam has had a great year when he's been on the court, but that's the issue. Sam Merrill this season has missed a lot of time, and it's been unfortunate. He's had bad luck, but he's only played 24 games this year, and that's really what it boils down to. I mean, you can say that for a number of players league-wide. The entire NBA has been injury-stricken and riddled this year, but Sam has definitely been hit with the injury bug a lot this year for various reasons. A lot of them having to do with that right hand. But in his 24 games, he's been lighting shit up. 13.8 points is a career high for him. He's essentially doubled his career average this season. He came into this season averaging nowhere near that much, right? This year, he's shooting 47% from the floor, including 40% from three-point distance on high volume. This dude's a sharpshooter. He's a flamethrower of the highest court. Need him out there on that court for his connective ability out there, especially in getting the bigs more involved with the DHO. You see that a lot. Max is heavily missed in that area. We talk about the DHO game with Jarrett and Evan in particular. That's a dude that can really get those guys involved because they're like all gas, no breaks out there, right? You're missing them. Hopefully, we'll see Max return sooner rather than later. I know the updates have left a lot to be desired. Hopefully, Sam is back even sooner than that. Who the fuck knows what's going on with Darius in regards to the timeline? I know we got an update, but he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. That's what it feels like. I don't know, man. That's about as clear cut and dry as I can say right now. And I think that's probably a good place to end it. There's just not much to take away from this game other than a win is a win, as they say. If you're still here by chance, do your boy a favor, hit that like button, subscribe. If you're not yet a subscriber to this Cavalier podcast, if you're over on X or Twitch or anywhere else, do the same thing. Go over to YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe, help your boy out, cook those books, all those good things, right? If you'd like to reach out to me, I can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you want to be added to the It's Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review, send a screenshot of said review to itscavalier53@gmail.com, and I will send you said invite. Have a good night.